The Tennessee maneuvers were a series of U.S. Army training exercises that took place in Middle Tennessee during World War II.
Maneuvers are simulations of combat that provide many benefits to military forces.
The Army chose Middle Tennessee because the terrain and the climate are a lot like Germany. From 1941 to 1944, tens of thousands of Army soldiers came to Middle Tennessee to train. McMillian says the maneuvers provided the Army with three things.
First, they allow for the strengthening and hardening of soldiers both mentally and physically so they'll be prepared for the rigors of the battlefield. Second, they allow all participants to be more familiar with the tools and equipment that they will use in combat situations. And lastly, they provide opportunities for officers to practice moving men and equipment on the battlefield quickly, efficiently, and effectively so they can accomplish their objectives with a minimum of casualties.
The soldiers learned how to do everything while they were here, from driving a truck, tank, or jeep, to learning how to parachute, from cooking and camping, to building a pontoon bridge across the river. The training was rigorous.
During the Tennessee maneuvers, at the end of every exercise, there were critiques to evaluate how officers used the tools and equipment that they had, and as a result of these critiques, they performed more efficiently in the next exercise.
Prior to the maneuvers, the U.S. Army negotiated rights of trespass with landowners to allow the simulated combat to take place. Tens of thousands of acres of farmland and pastures were transformed into a simulated war zone. Lebanon businessman Jack Cato remembers when the Army took over his family farm in the Rome community in western Smith County.
Maneuvers, they were everywhere. And sometimes jeeps and trucks and tanks would pass our house. And I liked the soldiers, and I spent a lot of time with them. I was 13 years old. I had a bicycle, and the soldiers weren't allowed to go to stores. And I would go to the store for them. I would go to the store and buy a box of candy bars, at 24 in a box, and I'd sell them to the soldiers too for 15. And I remember one day I made $15. That was a lot of money in 1943.
Civilians weren't supposed to feed, shelter, or give directions to the soldiers, but it happened anyway.
Tennesseans being who they are, they just couldn't abide by all those rules.
The training here came with a cost. More than 250 soldiers died during the Tennessee maneuvers, and hundreds more were injured.
Undoubtedly, what happened here during the Tennessee maneuvers saved lives overseas in all theaters during World War II, and more importantly, in subsequent wars, because the lessons learned here in Tennessee carried over, and the techniques and strategies that were developed here were used in later conflicts.